Stable Boy wasn't allowed near the dragons. Then the Dragon Emperor demanded only his touch. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The air in the royal stables of Draconia was thick with the scent of hay and leather polish, a stark contrast to the sulphurous heat that emanated from the grand dragon enclosures just beyond the ornate iron gates. 17-year-old Cole Bennett kept his head down as he worked, his calloused hands moving with practiced efficiency over the gleaming saddles that would never know the warmth of his touch against a dragon's scales. Cole had come to the capital 3 years ago, fleeing the drought that had decimated his family's farm in the outer provinces. The position as a stable boy had been a stroke of luck, room, board, and a small wage to send home to his ailing mother. But as he polished the intricate leather of yet another royal dragon saddle, he couldn't help but stare through the gates at the magnificent creatures beyond. Dragons were the pride of their kingdom, intelligent creatures bonded to the nobility and military elite. They were symbols of power, status, and magical ability. And Cole, like all commoners, was strictly forbidden from approaching them. "Eyes on your work, boy," Master Pharaoh barked, his leather crop slapping against his own thigh as he strode through the stable. The stable master was a thin man with a face permanently creased into a scowl, his gray hair slicked back with oil that matched the sheen of the leather he so revered. "Dragon handlers arrive at sunrise tomorrow for the Emperor's visit. Every piece must be perfect." "Yes, Master Pharaoh," Cole replied, dropping his gaze back to the saddle. But the moment the stable master turned away, his eyes drifted once more to the gates. 7 enormous dragons lounged in the paddock beyond, their scales glittering like jewels in the afternoon sun. Emerald, sapphire, ruby, amber, each dragon more breathtaking than the last. But it was the obsidian dragon at the far end that always caught Cole's attention. Slightly smaller than the others, but with scales that seemed to absorb the very sunlight around him. The dragon named Nightfire had arrived a month ago and had already injured 3 handlers. "He'll be put down if they can't control him," a voice said beside Cole, making him jump. Lily Dawson, another stable hand and Cole's only friend in the capital, leaned against a post, her golden brown hair escaping from beneath her work cap. "That's what the handlers were saying this morning. The Emperor arrives tomorrow, and if Nightfire acts up again, they'll declare him untrainable." "That's not fair," Cole said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He's just frightened. Can't they see that?" Lily raised an eyebrow. "And you know this how?" "You're not supposed to be studying them, Cole. It's dangerous." Cole shrugged, turning back to his polishing. "Just observation. The way he holds his wings, how he backs into the corner whenever someone approaches. The handlers are too aggressive with him." "Well, keep your observations to yourself. If Master Pharaoh hears you talking like you know something about dragons, he'll have you mucking out stalls until you're as old as he is." Lily glanced over her shoulder and then pulled something from her pocket. "Here, swiped this from the kitchen for you." It was a honey bun, still warm from the ovens. Cole's stomach growled in appreciation. Their meals were meager, and treats were rare. "You're going to get caught one of these days," he warned, but gratefully accepted the pastry and quickly devoured half of it. "Not likely. I'm much sneakier than you, Dragon Watcher." She grinned and snatched a piece of the bun for herself. "Just be careful, Cole. You know what happened to the last boy who got too interested in the dragons." Cole knew all too well. The boy had been dismissed without references, which was tantamount to a death sentence for someone with no family or connections in the capital. He would have ended up in the mines or worse. "I know," Cole said, but even as the words left his mouth, his gaze drifted back to Nightfire. The obsidian dragon suddenly raised his head, golden eyes scanning the stables. For a heart-stopping moment, those eyes locked with Cole's across the distance. There was intelligence there, and something else Cole couldn't name. A recognition, perhaps, or a question. The dragon's nostrils flared, and he rose to his feet, wings half unfurling. "Cole," Lily hissed, nudging him. "Stop staring." But Cole couldn't look away. The connection between them felt almost physical, a taut line of energy that thrummed in the air. Nightfire took a step toward the gate, and then another. A shout from the handlers broke the spell. A burly man with a control rod entered the paddock, and Nightfire immediately retreated, his posture becoming defensive. Cole winced as the handler jabbed the rod toward the dragon, forcing him back into his corner. "That's not right," Cole muttered. "They're making it worse." "Cole, please," Lily pleaded. "You need to stop. You're going to get yourself fired, or worse." With great effort, Cole turned his attention back to the saddle, but his hands moved mechanically now, his mind still with the obsidian dragon. That night, long after the others had fallen asleep in the shared stable hands' quarters, Cole lay awake. The connection he had felt with Nightfire wouldn't leave him. It was as though the dragon had been trying to communicate something important, something urgent. A commotion outside drew his attention. Through the small, grimy window, Cole could see torchlight in the direction of the dragon enclosures. Silently, he slipped from his bed, pulled on his boots, and crept out the back door of the quarters. The cool night air raised goosebumps on his arms as he made his way through the shadows, careful to avoid the guards patrolling the grounds. As he drew closer to the dragon paddock, he could hear raised voices. "We can't control him. He's too aggressive. The Emperor arrives tomorrow. We need all 7 dragons presented. Then put him down tonight and be done with it. He's not worth the risk." Cole's heart pounded in his chest. They were talking about Nightfire. Staying low, he moved closer, finally reaching a spot behind a stack of hay bales that gave him a clear view of the paddock. Nightfire was thrashing in the corner, for handlers surrounding him with control rods. The obsidian dragon's wings were partially bound, restricting his movement, but his tail lashed dangerously, keeping the men at bay. One handler jabbed forward with his rod, and Nightfire let out a sound that tore at Cole's heart. Not a roar of aggression, but a keen of pain. Before he could think better of it, Cole was on his feet. "Stop," he shouted. "You're hurting him." The handlers turned in surprise, and in that moment of distraction, Nightfire's tail connected with one of them, sending the man flying into the fence. "Who are you?" demanded the lead handler, a stocky man with a bushy beard. "Get back to your quarters, boy." "Please," Cole said, stepping forward despite his racing heart. "You're frightening him. That's why he's fighting you." "And what would a stable boy know about dragons?" the man sneered. But his attention was divided between Cole and the increasingly agitated dragon. Nightfire's golden eyes found Cole again, and that same connection sparked between them. Without thinking, Cole walked to the fence, his hand outstretched. "Are you mad?" one of the handlers shouted. "Get back." But Cole kept his eyes on Nightfire. "It's all right," he said softly. "I know you're scared. I know they've been rough with you." The dragon stilled, his massive head tilting as if listening intently. The handlers fell silent, watching in disbelief as Nightfire slowly, cautiously, approached the fence. "That's it," Cole murmured. "I'm not going to hurt you." Nightfire extended his neck, bringing his snout within inches of Cole's hand. Hot breath washed over Cole's skin, but he didn't flinch. For a long moment, they remained frozen in that position, the stable boy and the dragon, separated by the fence but connected by something deeper than the physical barrier. Then, with a gentleness that belied his size, Nightfire pressed his snout against Cole's palm. A jolt of energy surged through Cole's body, a warmth that started in his palm and raced up his arm, spreading throughout his chest and head. Images flashed in his mind, mountains he'd never seen, skies he'd never flown through, emotions that weren't his own yet felt as familiar as his heartbeat. When the connection faded, Cole found himself breathless, his legs weak. Nightfire had pulled back slightly, watching him with those intelligent golden eyes, but the dragon's posture had completely changed. Gone was the defensive stance, replaced by a calm alertness. "Impossible," whispered one of the handlers. The bearded leader stepped forward cautiously. "Boy, what's your name?" "Cole Bennett, sir. I work in the stables." The man exchanged glances with the other handlers. "I've never seen anything like that. He's been here a month and hasn't let anyone touch him without a fight." Cole swallowed hard. He's been mistreated before. He doesn't trust easily. The control rods frighten him. They remind him of something painful from his past. And how would you know that? The man asked, suspicion clear in his voice. Cole hesitated. He couldn't explain the images he'd seen, the feelings he'd experienced. They would think him mad or, worse, practicing forbidden magic. Just observation, sir. The way he reacts. The leader studied him for a long moment. Well, Cole Bennett, it seems you have a way with this dragon. Can you get him to accept his bindings for tomorrow's ceremony? The Emperor must see all 7 dragons in formation. Cole looked at Nightfire, who was still watching him intently. I can try, but only if you put away the control rods and let me work with him my way. Against all protocol and common sense, the handlers agreed. For the next hour, Cole slowly earned Nightfire's trust, speaking softly to him, moving gradually closer until he was in the paddock beside the magnificent creature. The handlers watched in amazement as Cole gently guided the dragon to accept a light ceremonial harness, explaining each step before he took it. By the time the eastern sky began to lighten, Nightfire was fully equipped for the ceremony, and Cole was sitting beside him, one hand resting on the dragon's muscular shoulder. Remarkable, the lead handler said, shaking his head. I've never seen anything like it in 20 years with dragons. Cole knew he should feel triumphant, but dread was settling in his stomach. He had broken the most fundamental rule. Commoners were not to approach dragons. Once the initial amazement wore off, there would be consequences. I should get back, he said, standing reluctantly. Master Pharaoh will be looking for me soon. The handler nodded. Go then, but say nothing of this to anyone until after the ceremony. We'll sort it out then. Cole gave Nightfire one last pat and slipped away, hurrying back to the stable hand's quarters. He made it just as Master Pharaoh's whistle signaled the start of the day. Lily cornered him as they collected their morning rations of porridge. Where were you last night? She whispered fiercely. Your bed was empty when I checked. I couldn't sleep, Cole said evasively, avoiding her searching gaze. Cole Bennett, I know when you're hiding something. What did you do? Before he could answer, Master Pharaoh's voice cut through the chatter. Attention, the royal procession approaches. To your stations now. Chaos erupted as everyone rushed to their assigned positions. The visit from Emperor Tiberius was the most significant event of the year. The Emperor would review the Dragon Squadron, a tradition dating back generations. Cole's position was near the rear of the royal viewing area, responsible for keeping the pathway clear of debris. It gave him a perfect view of the dragon paddock, now transformed with colorful banners and gleaming ceremonial equipment. As the royal trumpets sounded, announcing the Emperor's arrival, Cole's eyes sought out Nightfire. The obsidian dragon stood with the other 6, but unlike his previous agitation, he seemed calm, his golden eyes scanning the crowd until they found Cole. The connection between them flared again, fainter at this distance, but unmistakable. Cole felt a flutter of anxiety from the dragon, but also a strange determination. Emperor Tiberius was an imposing figure in crimson and gold robes, his silver-streaked black hair crowned with a circlet of dragon scales. Beside him walked his son, Prince Ethan, similarly attired but with a nervous set to his shoulders. At 17, the prince was the same age as Cole, but the resemblance ended there. Where Cole was lean and sunbrowned from outdoor work, the prince was pale and slightly soft, clearly more at home in libraries than training yards. The handlers led the dragons forward one by one, presenting them to the Emperor. Nightfire was last, and Cole held his breath as the obsidian dragon approached the royal party. For a moment, all seemed well. Then a guard near the Emperor shifted his ceremonial spear, the metal tip catching the sunlight and flashing brightly. Nightfire flinched, memories of the control rods clearly triggered. He reared back, wings half extending despite their bindings. The crowd gasped. Guards moved protectively toward the Emperor. The handler tugged desperately at Nightfire's harness, but the dragon ignored him, his golden eyes finding Cole in the crowd. Help me, the look seemed to say. Without thinking of the consequences, Cole dropped his broom and rushed forward. Halt, shouted a guard, but Cole darted past him. Nightfire, Cole called. It's all right. The obsidian dragon immediately calmed at the sound of Cole's voice, turning toward him with visible relief. Cole reached the dragon's side and placed a hand on his neck. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe." The connection between them hummed, stronger than before. Through it, Cole sent calming thoughts, reassurance that no harm would come. A stunned silence had fallen over the crowd. Cole suddenly realized what he had done. He had interrupted the royal ceremony, had touched a dragon in front of the emperor himself. It was an offense punishable by imprisonment or worse. Slowly, he turned to face Emperor Tiberius, his hand still on Nightfire's scales. The emperor's face was unreadable, his dark eyes moving between Cole and the dragon. "Your Majesty," Cole said, dropping to one knee, his head bowed. "Forgive my intrusion." "Rise, boy," the emperor commanded, his voice surprisingly gentle. "What is your name?" "Cole Bennett, Your Majesty." "I'm a stable hand." "A stable hand," the emperor repeated, looking to the lead handler for confirmation. "Yet this dragon responds to you, as I have rarely seen dragons respond to even our most experienced handlers." "I can't explain it, Your Majesty," Cole said honestly. The emperor stepped closer, studying Cole with intensity. "There is always an explanation, young Bennett. Dragons do not give their trust easily." Prince Ethan had moved to his father's side, his expression curious rather than fearful. "Father," he said quietly, "look at his eyes." The emperor's gaze sharpened. "Indeed," he murmured. "The golden flecks. It has been many years since I've seen such a mark." He turned to an advisor and spoke in low tones, then addressed Cole again. "How long have you worked in the royal stables?" 3 years, Your Majesty." "And in that time, have you ever approached the dragons before?" Cole swallowed hard. "No, Your Majesty. Not until last night, when I heard they were planning to put Nightfire down for being unmanageable." A murmur went through the crowd. The emperor raised a hand for silence. "Last night was the first time you touched a dragon, yet you calmed this one as if you had known him for years." It wasn't a question, but Cole nodded anyway. The emperor seemed to come to a decision. "The ceremony will continue as planned, but you, Cole Bennett, will remain with this dragon throughout." He turned to his guards. "After the presentation, bring the boy to the Star Chamber. There are questions that need answering." Cole's heart sank. The Star Chamber was where the emperor held his most private councils and his most serious judgments. But he had no choice but to obey. The ceremony proceeded, with Cole walking beside Nightfire as the dragons were paraded before the court. Throughout, he could feel the curious and sometimes hostile stares of the nobles. Commoners did not touch dragons. It was not done. When it was over, 2 royal guards escorted Cole to the palace, Nightfire following of his own accord despite the handler's attempts to lead him back to the paddock. "The dragon insists on staying with the boy," one guard reported, and after a brief consultation, it was decided that Nightfire would be allowed into the palace courtyard, an unprecedented concession. Cole was led through corridors of gleaming marble and gold, past tapestries depicting dragons and their riders in battle and flight. Servants and courtiers stopped to stare as he passed, whispers following in his wake. Finally, they reached the Star Chamber, a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky. The emperor was already seated on a raised chair, advisors and nobles gathered around him. Prince Ethan stood to his father's right, still watching Cole with that same curious expression. "Cole Bennett," the emperor said as the guards positioned Cole in the center of the room. "Do you know why you are here?" "Because I broke the law, Your Majesty," Cole answered honestly. "Commoners are forbidden from approaching dragons." "That is the law." "Yes," the emperor agreed. "But laws are made for reasons, and sometimes those reasons are forgotten." He leaned forward. "Tell me, what did you feel when you first touched the dragon?" Cole hesitated, then decided that honesty was his only option. "A connection, Your Majesty, like a warm current passing between us. And I saw images, places I've never been, feelings that weren't mine." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The emperor raised a hand for silence. "And the dragon, Nightfire, you called him. He has remained calm in your presence since?" Yes, your majesty. The emperor exchanged glances with a gray-haired woman at his side, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Cole Bennett. The emperor said, his voice taking on a formal tone. Do you know the history of dragon bonding in our kingdom? Cole shook his head. Only the stories everyone knows, your majesty. That dragons choose their riders from among the nobility, forming lifelong bonds. That is what everyone is taught, the emperor said. But it is not the complete truth. He stood, descending from his chair to approach Cole. In the earliest days of our kingdom, dragons chose their companions based on an innate compatibility, a resonance of spirit that has nothing to do with bloodline or status. It was only later, as the noble houses consolidated power, that laws were enacted restricting dragon handling to certain families. The gray-haired woman stepped forward. I am Magister Alara, the Emperor's chief advisor on draconic matters, she said. In my studies of ancient texts, I have found references to individuals born with a natural affinity for dragons. Individuals with golden flecks in their eyes, just as you have. Cole blinked in surprise. He knew his eyes were unusual, hazel with gold specks that had earned him teasing as a child, but he had never considered it might mean anything. The law forbidding commoners from approaching dragons, the emperor continued, was not created out of concern for safety or protocol, as we now teach. It was established to prevent dragons from choosing companions outside the noble houses, a practice that had become increasingly common and threatened the nobility's exclusive claim to dragon power. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Even some of the nobles looked shocked at this revelation. Father, Prince Ethan said, stepping forward. If what you say is true, then our entire system of dragon handling is based on suppressing the dragon's natural inclinations. Yes, the emperor agreed, a hint of sadness in his voice. A system I inherited and have perpetuated, until now. He turned back to Cole. What happened between you and Nightfire is exceedingly rare in our time. A true bond, formed spontaneously and completely. The dragon has chosen you, Cole Bennett, and in doing so has reminded us all of an ancient truth we have too long ignored. Cole struggled to process the emperor's words. What does this mean, your majesty? It means, the emperor said, that from this day forward, Nightfire is your companion, and you are his. And it means that the laws regarding dragon handling must be reconsidered. Shocked exclamations erupted around the chamber. Noble faces contorted in outrage. Advisors began speaking over one another, and guards shifted uncomfortably. Silence, the emperor commanded, and the room immediately stilled. My decision is made. Cole Bennett will be given the rank of Dragon Companion, with all the responsibilities and privileges that entails. Magister Alara will oversee his training. He turned to address the broader gathering. For too long, we have denied the true nature of the bond between human and dragon. We have forced dragons to accept riders chosen by bloodline rather than compatibility, and in doing so, we have diminished the power of both. This young man's connection with Nightfire is proof that the old ways still exist, if we have the wisdom to recognize them. Your Majesty, protested a richly dressed noble, this undermines centuries of tradition. Traditions built on falsehoods, Lord Darien, the Emperor replied firmly. And what has it gotten us? Dragons who barely tolerate their assigned riders, bonds that are shadows of what they could be. Our military strength has been declining for generations because of it. He gestured toward Cole. Look at how Nightfire responds to this boy after a single day, and tell me our current system serves us well. The noble had no response to that. Prince Ethan stepped forward again. Father, if I may suggest, perhaps Cole could assist with the training of future dragon companions as well. If others with his natural affinity exist, we should find them, regardless of their birth. The Emperor smiled at his son. A wise suggestion, Ethan, and one that gives me hope for the future of our kingdom under your eventual rule. He turned back to Cole. What say you, Cole Bennett? Will you accept this new role, with all its challenges and responsibilities? Cole's mind was reeling. In the space of a day, he had gone from stable boy to what? Dragon companion, the Emperor had called it. a position that apparently hadn't existed in generations. I, I have family in the outer provinces, Your Majesty, Cole said, thinking of his mother. I send my wages to help them. They will be provided for, the Emperor assured him, and given comfortable quarters in the capital, should they wish to relocate. Cole took a deep breath. Then I accept, Your Majesty, with gratitude and a promise to learn all I can. The Emperor nodded, satisfied. It is decided. Master Pharaoh, he called, and the stable master stepped forward from where he had been watching wide-eyed at the back of the chamber. You will gather Cole's belongings and have them moved to the Dragon Keeper's quarters immediately. Magister Alara, you will begin his formal education tomorrow. And tonight, Prince Ethan added, he should join us for the feast. If he is to hold the rank of Dragon Companion, the court must become accustomed to his presence. The Emperor agreed, though many of the nobles looked less than pleased at the prospect. As the meeting concluded and people began to disperse, Cole found himself standing somewhat dazed in the center of the Star Chamber, trying to absorb everything that had happened. Lily appeared at his side, her face pale. Cole, she whispered, what have you done? Everyone's talking about it. I'm not entirely sure, he admitted. But I think I just changed my life completely. And possibly the kingdom with it, she said, eyeing him with a mixture of awe and concern. The nobles are furious. I heard Lord Darien saying this could upset the entire social order. Maybe it should be upset, Cole said, surprising himself with the boldness of the statement. Lily gave him a small smile. Well, Dragon Companion Bennett, don't forget your old friends when you're flying with the Emperor. Never, Cole promised, squeezing her hand. And if what the Emperor said is true, there might be others like me. People with the affinity. You might want to check your eyes for gold flecks. She laughed, but there was uncertainty in it. Just be careful, Cole. You've been given an incredible opportunity, but you've also been thrust into court politics overnight. Not everyone will be happy about a commoner rising so quickly. Cole nodded, the reality of his new situation beginning to sink in. I'll be careful, he promised. That evening, dressed in hastily tailored clothes that felt alien against his skin, Cole entered the great hall for the feast. Nightfire had been settled in a special enclosure adjoining Cole's new quarters that were larger than the entire stable hand's dormitory. As he hesitated at the entrance, unsure of protocol, Prince Ethan appeared beside him. Don't be nervous, the prince said quietly. Just follow my lead. Why are you helping me? Cole asked, genuinely curious. The prince gave him a considering look. Because I've studied our kingdom's history extensively, and I know how much we've lost through rigid adherence to systems that no longer serve us. And, he added with a small smile, because I've never seen a dragon respond to anyone the way Nightfire responds to you. It's inspiring. With the prince's guidance, Cole navigated the complex social ritual of the feast. There were awkward moments. Of course, he used the wrong fork, didn't recognize half the dishes served, and was at a loss for conversation with the nobles seated near him. But whenever his confidence flagged, he felt a warm pulse of encouragement through his bond with Nightfire, though the dragon was nowhere near the hall. After the meal, as musicians played and courtiers mingled, Cole found himself approached by Magister Alara. You've caused quite the stir, young man, she said, her gray eyes sharp but not unkind. Tomorrow, your real work begins. The connection you share with Nightfire is natural, but harnessing it properly will require study and discipline. I'm ready to learn, Cole said sincerely. I want to understand what's happening between us. Good, she nodded. Because there is more to this than the Emperor revealed publicly. Much more. Before she could elaborate, a commotion at the hall's entrance drew everyone's attention. Guards were struggling with someone, a woman in travel-stained clothes who was insisting on entry. I must see the Emperor. It's urgent, she cried, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall. Cole froze. He knew that voice. Mother, he whispered in disbelief. She broke free of the guards, her eyes scanning the crowd until they locked onto Cole. Cole, she called, pushing forward. Emperor Tiberius raised a hand, stopping the guards from pursuing her. Let her pass, he commanded. This is the mother of our new dragon companion. Cole hurried to meet her, confusion and joy mingling as he embraced her. Mother, what are you doing here? How did you travel so quickly? Vera Bennett pulled back to look at her son, her face lined with worry. I came as soon as I received the message about your new position. Cole, there's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago. The Emperor had approached them, his expression grave. Perhaps this conversation would be better held in private, he suggested. No, Your Majesty, Vera said, straightening her shoulders. What I have to say concerns not just my son, but the future of your kingdom. It should be heard by all. After a moment's consideration, the Emperor nodded. Speak, then. Vera took a deep breath. My husband, Cole's father, was not a simple farmer as we led everyone to believe. He was a dragon companion, one of the last to be chosen naturally before the practice was fully suppressed. He fled the capital when the purge of commoner dragon riders began 30 years ago. Gasps and murmurs spread through the hall. Cole stared at his mother in shock. His father had died when Cole was only 5, and he had few memories of the man. The golden flecks in Cole's eyes are his inheritance, Vera continued, as is his affinity for dragons. When I heard what happened today, I knew the truth could no longer be hidden. Why didn't you tell me? Cole asked, his voice barely audible. To protect you, his mother replied sadly. Your father was hunted for years by those who feared what his existence represented, proof that dragon bonding wasn't the exclusive right of nobles. We lived in hiding, moving from province to province. After his death, I thought we were safe, that no one would look for his son. But when you were offered the position in the royal stables 3 years ago, I feared it was a trap. It wasn't, Cole realized, pieces falling into place. It was just chance. Or fate, the Emperor said quietly. He turned to address the stunned court. 30 years ago, my father ordered the removal of all commoner dragon companions, calling it a purification of the royal dragon squadrons. I was a young man then and accepted his reasons without question. Today, I see the full consequence of that decision. We have denied dragons their true companions and weakened our kingdom in the process. Magister Alara stepped forward. Your Majesty, if what Mistress Bennett says is true, then Cole's father would have been Marcus Fletcher, who rode the silver dragon Stormwing. Their bond was legendary among those of us who study such things. Stormwing was never successfully bonded to another after Marcus disappeared. Fletcher, Cole repeated. The name felt right somehow, though he had always known himself as Bennett, his mother's maiden name. What happened to Stormwing? She lives still, the Emperor said, though she has refused all riders for decades and keeps to herself in the far reaches of the Royal Dragon Preserve. Many have tried to approach her, but she accepts no one. I want to see her, Cole said suddenly, certainty filling him. If she was bonded to my father, maybe she would respond to me. The Emperor studied Cole intently. Perhaps, but that is a matter for another day. Tonight, we have much to consider about the future of dragon bonding in our kingdom. Lord Darien pushed his way to the front of the crowd, his face flushed with anger. Your Majesty, surely you cannot be considering reinstating commoner dragon riders based on this convenient story? The noble houses have maintained the dragon squadrons for generations. And in that time, our dragons have grown fewer, less powerful, and increasingly difficult to bond with, the Emperor replied sharply. We have been slowly weakening our greatest strength through pride and prejudice. Prince Ethan joined his father. The historical records support this conclusion, Lord Darien. In the earliest days of our kingdom, when dragons chose companions based solely on natural affinity, our squadrons were twice as large and far more formidable in battle. The decline began precisely when the noble houses restricted dragon bonding to their bloodlines. Lord Darien's face darkened. This is treason against the natural order. No, the Emperor said firmly. It is a return to the natural order. Dragons are not possessions to be inherited or status symbols to be claimed by birthright. They are intelligent beings who choose their own companions. We forgot that truth, to our detriment. He turned to Cole and his mother. Mistress Bennett, your courage in coming forward is commendable. You and your son have my protection and my gratitude for helping us see what we have been blind to for too long." The court was in chaos now, nobles arguing amongst themselves, some looking thoughtful, while others appeared outraged. The emperor let it continue for a moment, then raised his hand for silence. "Enough. My decision stands. Cole Bennett, or Fletcher, if he chooses to reclaim his father's name, is confirmed as a dragon companion. And beginning tomorrow, Magister Alera will implement a new protocol for identifying potential companions throughout the kingdom, regardless of their birth or status." He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of his nobles. "Our kingdom faces growing threats from beyond our borders. We cannot afford to deny ourselves the strength that comes from proper dragon bonding. Those of you who truly care for Draconia's future will see the wisdom in this change." As the emperor concluded his speech, Cole felt a sudden warmth in his mind. Nightfire, reaching out through their bond. But there was something else too, a fainter presence, like a whisper from far away. Something about it felt familiar, though Cole was certain he had never experienced it before. "Stormwing," his mother whispered, seeing his expression. "You can feel her, can't you? Just like your father could." Cole nodded slowly. "I think so. She's sad. And lonely. Then perhaps it is not a matter for another day after all," the emperor said, overhearing them. "Magister Alera, prepare an expedition to the Dragon Preserve for tomorrow. Cole should meet his father's dragon as soon as possible. And if they bond," Lord Darien demanded, "would you have this boy command 2 dragons when no one in living memory has bonded with more than one?" "If they bond," the emperor said calmly, "then we will have further proof that our current system needs to change." He placed a hand on Cole's shoulder. "But I suspect that is not what will happen. Dragons are as individual as humans, with their own desires and needs. What Stormwing needs may not be a new rider, but a connection to the son of her former companion." The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Cole. His mother was given quarters near his own, and as they walked together through the palace corridors, she told him more about his father. How Marcus Fletcher had been chosen by Stormwing when he was just a stable boy himself. How they had flown together for 5 years before the purge forced them into hiding. "He missed her every day," Vera said softly. "Sometimes I would find him standing outside at night, staring at the sky as if he could feel her somewhere out there. I think part of him died when they were separated." "Why didn't he ever tell me?" Cole asked, the hurt of the deception still fresh. "You were so young," his mother replied, "and he feared that if you knew, you might say something that would put us all in danger. We always planned to tell you when you were older, but then he fell ill, and afterward." She sighed. "I convinced myself it was safer if you never knew." They reached Cole's new quarters, where Nightfire was visible through a large arched opening that led to his enclosure. The obsidian dragon raised his head as they entered, golden eyes curious. "He's beautiful," Vera said, staying close to the doorway. "Your father would be so proud." Would he? Cole wasn't sure. Everything he had believed about himself and his family had been upended in a single day. "More than you can imagine," his mother assured him. He always said that one day, things would change, that dragons would once again choose their true companions. He didn't live to see it, but you're making his dream reality, Cole. Nightfire rumbled softly and extended his neck toward Vera, sniffing curiously. "It's all right," Cole told his mother. "He's just getting to know you. He can feel that you're important to me." Hesitantly, Vera stepped closer and allowed the dragon to sniff her hand. "The bond is that strong already?" Cole nodded. "It's like he's a part of me now. I can feel what he feels, sometimes see through his eyes if I concentrate." "That's exactly how your father described it," Vera said, wonder in her voice. "He said it was like having a second heart beating alongside his own." As Vera cautiously stroked Nightfire's scales, Cole felt a renewed sense of purpose settling over him. His life had changed irrevocably, but perhaps it had simply been returning to the path it was always meant to follow, the path his father had walked before him. "Tomorrow we meet Stormwing," he said quietly. "Do you think she'll remember my father?" "Dragons never forget their companions," his mother replied with certainty. "Even death doesn't break that bond completely." The next morning dawned clear and bright. Cole was provided with proper dragon rider's attire, leather pants and jacket reinforced at strategic points to protect against scale friction, boots designed for the specialized stirrups of dragon saddles, and gloves that would allow him to grip without slipping. Magister Alera arrived as he was finishing dressing, accompanied by Prince Ethan. "The expedition is ready," she announced. "Nightfire has been prepared for the journey." "Will I be riding him?" Cole asked, a flutter of nerves in his stomach. He had never flown before. "Not alone," the Magister replied. "Not for your first flight. The prince will accompany you on his dragon, Sunfire. Nightfire will follow under the guidance of an experienced handler until we reach the preserve." Cole tried to hide his disappointment. He had been looking forward to his first flight with Nightfire. Prince Ethan seemed to notice. "It's for safety, Cole. Dragon riding requires training, especially for the first flight. But once we reach the preserve, if things go well with Stormwing, perhaps you can try a short supervised flight with Nightfire before we return." That brightened Cole's spirits. "Thank you, Your Highness." "Ethan, please," the prince insisted. "We're going to be working closely together in the coming months. The formality will only get in the way." Cole nodded, still unused to the idea of being on a first-name basis with the heir to the throne. They made their way to the dragon launch platform, a massive stone structure atop one of the palace's highest towers. 6 dragons were already assembled, including Nightfire, who perked up visibly when he saw Cole. Beside him was a magnificent golden dragon with copper-tinted wing edges, Sunfire, the prince's companion. Vera was waiting with the emperor and several advisors, including Lord Darien, whose sour expression made it clear he still opposed the entire endeavor. "The preserve is 2 hours' flight to the north," Emperor Tiberius explained. "Stormwing has made her territory in the Crystal Valley, an area few approach because of her territorial nature. She's driven off or injured every rider who's tried to claim her since your father," Vera added. "The last attempt was 15 years ago. Since then, they've left her in peace." Cole felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. What if Stormwing rejected him too? What if this connection he thought he felt was just wishful thinking? As if sensing his doubt, Nightfire moved closer, nudging Cole gently with his snout. Comfort and confidence flowed through their bond, steadying Cole's nerves. "It's time," Magister Alera announced, checking the sun's position. "We should reach the preserve by midday." After saying goodbye to his mother and receiving a formal blessing from the emperor, Cole was helped onto Sunfire's back, taking the rear position behind Prince Ethan. The golden dragon was larger than Nightfire, with broader wings and more muscular shoulders. "Hold tight to the secondary harness," Ethan instructed. "And don't worry, Sunfire is the steadiest flyer in the squadron." Before Cole could respond, Sunfire launched into the air with powerful strokes of his wings. The sudden acceleration pushed Cole back against the rear saddle ridge, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. Then they leveled out, and the world opened up beneath them. It was glorious. The capital spread out like a miniature model, the palace and surrounding estates giving way to the city proper, and then the patchwork of farms and forests beyond. The wind rushed past them, cool and exhilarating, and Cole found himself laughing out loud from the sheer joy of it. Through his bond with Nightfire, he could feel the obsidian dragon's satisfaction at his reaction. Nightfire was flying slightly below and behind them, easily keeping pace despite the handler on his back. "Amazing, isn't it?" Ethan called back over his shoulder. "Nothing compares to the first flight." "It's incredible," Cole replied, unable to contain his enthusiasm. "I never imagined it would feel like this." For the next 2 hours, they soared over the kingdom, following the great northern river toward the mountains. Cole absorbed every detail, from the way dragons use thermals to gain altitude with minimal effort to the subtle shifts in weight that Ethan used to guide Sunfire. By watching and feeling Nightfire's responses, Cole was getting an accelerated education in dragon flight. As they approached the mountains, the landscape below changed from gentle farmland to rugged forests and finally to the dramatic peaks of the northern range. Between 2 towering mountains lay a valley that seemed to sparkle in the midday sun, the Crystal Valley, named for the unusual mineral formations that caught and reflected light. There, Magister Alara called from her green dragon, pointing to a plateau halfway up the eastern slope. That's Stormwing's territory. Cole narrowed his eyes, scanning the plateau. At first, he saw nothing but rock and scattered vegetation. Then a movement caught his eye, something silver, flashing in the sunlight before disappearing into a cave entrance. "I saw her," he said, the distant presence in his mind growing stronger. "She knows we're here." The dragons circled down to land on a flat area below the plateau. As soon as they touched down, Cole slid from Sunfire's back, his legs unsteady after the long flight, but his attention focused entirely on the cave above. "She's watching us," he said quietly. "She's curious, but wary." Magister Alara raised an eyebrow. "You can sense her that clearly from here?" Cole nodded. "It's different from my connection with Nightfire. Fainter, like an echo. But it's there." "Fascinating," the Magister murmured. "The blood connection appears to create a partial bond, even without direct contact." Nightfire had landed beside them and immediately moved to Cole's side, pressing against him protectively. Through their bond, Cole could feel the dragon's uncertainty about this new presence in Cole's mind. "It's all right," Cole assured him, placing a hand on the obsidian scales. "She was my father's companion. That's why I can sense her." "How should we proceed?" Prince Ethan asked, looking up at the cave entrance. "If we all approach, she might feel threatened." "I need to go alone," Cole said with sudden certainty. "Just me and Nightfire." "That could be dangerous," Magister Alara warned. "Stormwing is powerful and has been isolated for decades. We don't know how she'll react." "I do," Cole insisted. "She won't harm me. She's lonely, and she's waiting." After a brief discussion, it was agreed. Cole would approach the cave with Nightfire, while the others remained at the landing area, ready to intervene if necessary. The handler was reluctant to relinquish control of Nightfire for the climb, but at Prince Ethan's insistence, he finally relented. "Be careful," Ethan said as Cole prepared to depart. "Trust your instincts, but don't take unnecessary risks. Stormwing may be your father's dragon, but she's still wild after all these years alone." Cole nodded, appreciating the concern. With a final adjustment to his gloves, he turned to Nightfire. "Ready to meet someone special?" The obsidian dragon rumbled softly in assent, and together they began the climb toward the plateau. The path was steep and rocky, forcing them to pick their way carefully. Nightfire could have flown up easily, but Cole sensed it was important they approach on foot, as equals rather than intruders from above. As they neared the plateau, the presence in Cole's mind grew stronger, more defined. He could feel Stormwing's emotions more clearly now. Curiosity mingled with deep sorrow and a flicker of hope she seemed afraid to acknowledge. "We're almost there," Cole murmured to Nightfire. "She's nervous. Be gentle." They crested the edge of the plateau, and Cole got his first clear view of the cave entrance, a jagged opening in the mountainside, partially obscured by boulders. There was no sign of the silver dragon, but Cole could feel her presence just inside, watching, waiting. Taking a deep breath, Cole stepped forward into the open area before the cave. Nightfire remained slightly behind him, alert but non-threatening. "Stormwing," Cole called softly. "I'm Cole Fletcher, son of Marcus. I've come to meet you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a low rumble echoed from the cave, and slowly, cautiously, a magnificent silver head emerged into the sunlight. Stormwing was larger than Nightfire, her scales the color of polished silver with hints of blue along her crest. Her eyes were a deep sapphire, and they fixed on Cole with an intelligence that took his breath away. "Hello," Cole said, remaining still as the dragon emerged fully from the cave. Her wings, when she unfurled them slightly, shimmered with an iridescent quality that gave them an almost ghostly appearance. Stormwing approached slowly, her head lowered to Cole's level. Through their tenuous connection, Cole could feel her scrutiny, her search for something familiar in his features, his scent, his essence. "I know I'm not him," Cole said quietly, "and I'm not trying to replace him. I wanted to meet you, to understand that part of my father's life." The silver dragon came closer still, until her snout was mere inches from Cole's face. Her breath was warm against his skin as she inhaled deeply, taking in his scent. Then, with gentle deliberation, she pressed her forehead against his. The connection that had been a whisper exploded into full voice. Images flooded Cole's mind. His father as a young man, laughing as he flew on Stormwing's back. Quiet moments as they rested together in this very cave. The pain of their separation and the empty years that followed. Tears streamed down Cole's face as he experienced the depth of the bond his father had shared with this magnificent creature, and the terrible grief both had endured when it was severed. "I'm sorry," Cole whispered, resting his hands on either side of Stormwing's face. "I'm so sorry you lost each other." Stormwing made a soft, keening sound, but through their connection, Cole could feel something changing, the sharp edge of grief dulling, not disappearing but transforming into something more bearable. In his presence, she had found a connection to her beloved companion again, a thread of what had been lost. Behind him, Nightfire shifted, uncertain about this intense exchange. Cole reached back without looking, maintaining contact with Stormwing while reassuring Nightfire through their bond. "It's all right," he said aloud for both dragons. "You're both part of my life now. Different bonds, but both important." Slowly, tentatively, Nightfire moved forward until he stood beside Cole. The two dragons regarded each other over Cole's head, the sleek obsidian youth and the majestic silver elder. Through his dual connection, Cole felt their cautious assessment of each other, then a gradual acceptance. There was no jealousy or competition, only a recognition of shared purpose. "Will you come back with us?" Cole asked Stormwing, though he already knew the answer from her thoughts. "There's a place for you at the palace. You wouldn't have to be alone anymore." The silver dragon considered, her sapphire eyes moving from Cole to Nightfire and back again. Then, with a decisive movement, she lowered herself to the ground in a clear invitation to mount. Cole hesitated. "I've never actually flown solo," he admitted. "Today was my first time on a dragon at all." Stormwing's response through their connection was one of amusement and reassurance. She would not let him fall. And more importantly, this moment, their first flight together, was something she wanted to share with no one else present. "All right," Cole said, his heart racing with anticipation. "Nightfire, will you follow us down?" The obsidian dragon rumbled in agreement, stepping back to give them space. With more confidence than he felt, Cole approached Stormwing's side and carefully climbed onto her back, settling into the natural hollow just ahead of her wing joints. There was no saddle, no harness, nothing to hold on to except the ridges of her neck scales. "I'm ready," he said, leaning forward to wrap his arms securely around her neck. Stormwing rose smoothly to her feet, turned toward the edge of the plateau, and launched into the air. Cole's stomach dropped as they plummeted briefly before Stormwing's wings caught the air. Then they were soaring, rising in a graceful spiral above the Crystal Valley. Through their bond, Cole could feel Stormwing's joy at flying with a companion again, her delight in sharing the sky with Marcus's son. It was different from the flight on Sunfire. Without a saddle or harness, Cole had to rely entirely on his balance and his connection with Stormwing. But somehow it felt more natural, more right. As if his body already knew how to move with hers, guided by the memories she shared through their bond. Nightfire launched from the plateau and flew alongside them, his golden eyes watching Cole carefully. The three of them circled the valley once before descending toward the landing area where the others waited. Prince Ethan and Magister Alara stood open-mouthed as they approached, clearly stunned by the sight of Cole riding bareback on the legendary silver dragon who had rejected all riders for decades. "Impossible," Lord Darien muttered as they landed, his face pale. "Not impossible," Magister Alara corrected, her eyes shining with academic excitement. "Simply forgotten. This is how it was meant to be. Dragons choosing their companions based on true compatibility." Cole slid carefully from Stormwing's back, his legs wobbling not from the flight, but from the emotional intensity of the experience. The silver dragon remained close, her wing partially extended over him in a protective gesture that needed no translation. Prince Ethan approached slowly, showing appropriate respect to Stormwing. "I take it she's decided to return with us?" he asked with a smile. "Yes," Cole confirmed. "She's been alone too long." "Two dragons," Lord Darien said, finding his voice. "Never in recorded history has one person bonded with two dragons simultaneously. I'm not bonded to Stormwing the way I am to Nightfire," Cole explained, sensing the distinction clearly now. "She was my father's companion. Our connection is through that shared blood and memory. She's more like," he searched for the right word, "family. A guardian." "Fascinating," Magister Alara murmured, already making mental notes for what would clearly be extensive research. "The implications for our understanding of dragon bonding are enormous. The implications for our kingdom are what concern me," Prince Ethan said thoughtfully. "If we begin identifying and training naturally compatible dragon companions, regardless of birth, our aerial forces could become the strongest they've been in generations." He looked at Cole with newfound respect. "And you will be at the center of it all." Cole's head was spinning with the enormity of it all. Just days ago, he had been a stable boy, polishing saddles he was forbidden to use. Now he stood between two dragons who had chosen him, discussing the future of the kingdom with the prince himself. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. Stormwing nudged him gently from behind, and Nightfire pressed against his side. Through his connections with both dragons, Cole felt their unwavering support and confidence in him. "Perhaps none of us are truly ready for the changes coming," Prince Ethan said, looking from Cole to the dragons. "But we will face them together, and Draconia will be stronger for it." As they prepared for the return journey, Cole took a moment to look back at the Crystal Valley, where Stormwing had lived alone for so many years. A chapter was closing, for her, for him, for the kingdom itself. But a new one was beginning, one full of possibilities that neither nobles nor commoners had dared imagine for generations. Cole mounted Nightfire for their return flight, having persuaded the handler that he was capable of the journey after his flight with Stormwing. As they rose into the sky, the silver dragon flying protectively on one side and Prince Ethan on Sunfire on the other, Cole felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. He was Cole Fletcher, son of Marcus, companion to Nightfire, connected by blood and memory to Stormwing. And together, they would help forge a new future for dragons and humans alike. When they reached the palace, Cole's mother was waiting, tears streaming down her face at the sight of Stormwing. The silver dragon recognized her immediately, lowering her head to gently touch Vera's outstretched hand in a gesture of shared grief and remembrance. "He would be so proud," Vera whispered, looking from the dragon to her son. "So very proud." In the days that followed, Cole's life transformed completely. Magister Alara began his formal education in draconic history, biology, and bonding techniques. Prince Ethan included him in strategic discussions about reforming the dragon squadrons. And Emperor Tiberius, to the shock of the court, appointed Cole as special advisor on dragon affairs, a newly created position that gave him authority over the identification and training of future dragon companions. Not everyone accepted these changes willingly. Lord Darien and several other noble houses protested vigorously, arguing that commoners lacked the education and refinement necessary for such responsibility. But their objections lost force each time Cole demonstrated his natural affinity with dragons, not just Nightfire and Stormwing, but with the entire royal squadron, all of whom responded to him with unusual trust and cooperation. 1 month after his appointment, Cole stood on the palace balcony overlooking the dragon paddock, where a dozen children from across the kingdom, some noble-born, others from humble backgrounds, were being introduced to young dragons under his supervision. "It's working," Prince Ethan said, joining him at the railing. 3 probable bonds already, according to Magister Alara's observations. "And did you see Lord Darien's face when that baker's daughter connected with the emerald hatchling?" Cole smiled. "He'll come around eventually. The results speak for themselves. The dragons are happier, more responsive. Even the older ones who've been paired with noble riders for years are showing improvement since we revised the handling protocols. My father is pleased, Ethan said. He believes this may be the most significant reform of his reign. He paused, looking at Cole thoughtfully. He's also been discussing the future. My future, specifically, and who might serve as my chief advisors when I eventually take the throne. Cole raised an eyebrow, suddenly understanding the prince's meaning. That's a conversation for many years in the future, surely. Perhaps, Ethan agreed. But it's never too early to consider the kind of leaders we want to be. He placed a hand on Cole's shoulder. The kingdom needs people who challenge traditions when those traditions no longer serve the greater good. People who see possibilities others miss. Below them, a young dragon had approached one of the children, a quiet girl from a fishing village who had golden flecks in her eyes, just like Cole's. As they watched, the dragon gently touched his snout to her outstretched hand, and the girl's expression transformed with wonder. Another connection made, Cole said softly. Another life changed. Another piece of our future secured, Ethan added. As the sun set over the capital, painting the dragon paddock in hues of gold and crimson, Cole felt Nightfire and Stormwing reaching out to him through their bonds, sharing in his satisfaction at what they had accomplished together. From stable boy forbidden to approach dragons to the architect of a new era in dragon-human relations, it was a journey none could have predicted, least of all Cole himself. But looking at the children below, their faces alight with possibility, he knew it was only the beginning. The dragons had chosen, and in doing so, had chosen a new path for the kingdom itself. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.